Let me bring in our panel in the meantime, my Sky News colleague Janine Perrott and the political editor with the Herald Sun, James Campbell. Good to see you both this morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Look, while that's going on in Beijing, in Sydney, the AUSMIN talks are about to get underway. We'll see some pictures from there shortly as well too. Linda Reynolds and Maurice Payne on the Australian side, Mike Pompeo and Mark Esper on the American side. I'm not sure how many people would recognise all four of those faces at the moment, but they are some pretty powerful people. And these are very important talks, particularly for Australia, our number one security ally of the United States. Look, James, to you first, what do you think they will be focusing on largely today?
Well, I think that there's two aspects: the ongoing situation with China and it's in the region, and more specifically, and the hotspot question is, are we going to be joining in patrols to deal with the Iranian situation in the Gulf? And we still don't really have an indication from the government which way they're going to jump on that.
No, we don't. And look, we were discussing this with Paul earlier. It's a difficult one. There's an argument that we need to play our part. We rely on the trade from there as well. But we have far more limited resources, Janine, and demands in our own backyard as well here. What are you expecting on that front, but also on the regular discussions about China and its activities in the region?
Yeah, the Iranian one, as James said, that's probably the most immediate and probably the most interesting at the moment, because I just go back to a tweet, strangely enough, from the president only a week ago when the Iranian oil tanker was in conflict with the Brits and there was rising tensions. And he tweeted that why should the US keep patrolling the Straits of Hormuz? We actually are self-sufficient in oil now. It's not that important. And anyway, why should we bear the cost? We've had to do it. The usual argument. So it didn't sound to me the best argument to be trying to get your allies to do it. Having said that, Australia's precarious reserves of oil situation, even though we get it mainly, it has to go through Asia, makes you think that we should try and keep those lanes open. But we have to be very wary. And, I'm a supporter of the US alliance, but you do have to be very wary when Pompeo is known as an Iran hawk. He is very keen for some kind of confrontation. So I think this time we need to be wary. There's only 6 hours of meeting, so that's a very big one, and they need all the help they can get on that. China is another fascinating one, because the US has recently, the Trump administration, getting out of the INF treaty, has talked about putting intermediate-range missiles in Asia, and there's talk of an arms race. So there's a whole lot of other defence issues. On this, yes.
They do want these intermediate-range missiles. Now that they're out of that decades-old treaty that had to do with Russia, they want to start basing some of these intermediate-range missiles at ground bases in Asia. It just seems like, James, with the US now gung-ho on that front, China apparently keen on a naval base in Cambodia, that the arms race is only going to escalate in this part of the world.
Yeah, that's true. And the issue, in a sense, the problem for us is the same as it is in the Iranian Straits of Hormuz situation. If we were to get involved in, going toe-to-toe with the Chinese in this space, with the United States, and we would get involved in the Straits of Hormuz operation, it's far more likely that the enemies of the United States would make an example of us. I mean, let's say there was to be a terrible accident and the Chinese were to sink an Australian ship, or the Iranians were to, mine an Australian frigate. That's a provocative act that doesn't necessarily draw the full-scale response from the United States that attacking an American ship would be. We are essentially, they would be a way of testing the United States by clipping our wings. So we need to be conscious of the fact that when we join these sorts of expeditions these days, we are perhaps putting ourselves in harm's way in a way that we perhaps weren't in the past, because these countries are very, very interested at the moment in essentially testing what the United States is and isn't prepared to do. And what it's prepared to do for itself, it may not be prepared to do for its allies. And, we need to be very mindful of that.